I've never actually explained this in any degree of detail to anyone before, but the impacts of working in hospitality and having those sort of environments that, aren't tailored for individuals, that aren't, set up and supportive in a certain way, is that ultimately you become physically or mentally unwell, or you leave the industry. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case for anyone, because I could have left this industry years ago, but I chose to stay because I love it, and I believe it has a good future. But mental illness and was one of the big drivers of setting the project up. But actually, everything that you see from the Burnt Chef project is because I didn't prescribe it. I didn't come in and say, yeah, this is what you guys need. No, it was through conversations. It was through keeping my mouth shut, listening to what people were saying, asking them why, asking them how they felt, asking them what they could see and do differently. And so the Burnt Chef project, as you say, it isn't just about mental health. It's about addressing all of the imbalances within hospitality so that we can curate and take charge of an industry that for a long time has just ticked along as the way it's been done before. But actually now we can have a say, we can have the education, we can have the support to make this the brilliant profession that we know it can be, that doesn't cost relationships, health, lives, money. We can do it sustainably.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hospitality Bites. I'm your host and self-proclaimed hospitality hustler, mompreneur Colleen Silk, but I'm also a Burnt Chef ambassador, which many of you know. And so today's episode is super, super special for me because I am joined by our founder, Kris Hall, who I've actually never got to speak with one-on-one. So it's really, really exciting to me. And he's joining me today in the afternoon their time, in the morning here in the US. So thank you, Kris, for joining me.
Thank you ever so much for having me as well. What an introduction. Thank you. I'm sorry that we haven't spoken before.
Well, we've emailed. We've never actually got to meet face to face without it being like hundreds of other people on a streaming web meeting.
Yes, yeah, true. It's one of the underestimated challenges of when you're building a community, especially our ambassador network, which are so valuable. It's really there aren't enough days in the year to be able to get around everyone to have conversations, and I haven't yet figured out an effective route, but I'm pleased we're doing it now.
And how many ambassadors do we have now across the globe?
Last count, I think we've got about 220. And we've got another 200 odd going through application at this moment in time, which is just...
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's heavy. There's a lot of really passionate individuals out there who want to help. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. It's cool, eh? The family's growing.
When I applied 2 years ago, there was only 7 U.S. ambassadors. And so we've doubled in the 2 years since I've joined, just here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
States, Canada, Australia, I think are some of our quickest growing areas. South Africa is starting to grow. We've got ambassadors in Europe. We've got a couple in Sri Lanka or Malaysia now as well. It's probably the best club in the world where like-minded individuals are there to support each other and to not get on each other's cases or to just put them down. And It's a different side to hospitality. It's a safe side, which is it's cool, right?
I love that you said that safe side. Yeah. It's also great because through the network of people that have joined there's a lot of people that do different things in hospitality. It's not just like people that work in back of house or front of house and like that very sharp divide that many of us just have created. But there's so many different types of jobs and careers out in hospitality, and we all have like different things we're good at. So we all spread the word a little bit differently in our own way, which is also really fun to see how it's happening and evolving.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's amazing. It truly is. I think if anything, over the Burnt Chef journey over the last 5.5 years, I'm most proud of the community of ambassadors that we've created, and that they run. The project is nothing without the ambassadors and people like yourself who represent and spread the word and support others, and who just invest so much time and energy into it. Because it's all very well good talking global domination and worldwide support, but actually there's still only a few of us in the internal team. The ambassadors are the ones who are making it happen. That's cool. That's really cool.
It's been really fun. I've really enjoyed it. It's been the best thing that's happened to me in my life personally, and professionally, because I've had a lot of things going on, which you're well aware of, and have something to fall back on, and people caring for you and checking on you, like in your corner from like across the world, is so empowering, because it's like, okay, I'm not alone. This shit sucks, but I'm not by myself. There's a whole team of people that like want to see me succeed, and we all have this common goal. It's very, very nice. I feel very lucky to be a part of it, and it's kind of cool because you started it 5.5 years ago, which you just remembered that it was 5.5 years ago, but that you weren't actually in the industry at that time. You were on the outside kind of looking in.
Yeah, so my background is in sales and marketing, and I've worked in a variety of different sectors. So I started off selling plasma TVs when they first came onto the market, before
That's
VHS
incredible.
VHS recorders. That was my first foray into sales, and I've worked in like finance, insurance. I've worked in mechanical engineering. I did bachelor and bachelorette parties for a while. Don't worry, I wasn't a chipmunk.
I was like, what were you doing?
I was just organizing them. I wasn't performing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I helped travel companies start up, and for me, I fell into hospitality full time when I moved in the UK to a different part of the world, and I wasn't able to move my job as easily. So I sort of just took a sales job for a food wholesaler supplying fine dining ingredients. Now, I was always aware of the reputation of chefs because I used to work in bars and nightclubs in my spare time down in Bournemouth. And for those who aren't familiar, Bournemouth has got sort of 7 miles of perfect coast. There are no stones on the sand. It's like the Malibu of the UK. It's beautiful. And it's also quite a stag and hen busy place. So the nightclubs, we had some incredible nightclubs down there. But I fell into hospitality full time when I started supplying chefs, and up until that point, I was always was aware of where the kitchen was, but wouldn't dare to dream go into the
Cross it.
bloody thing. Yeah, no way. Especially as a
Yeah.
server, I'd absolutely hate it. And I remember my first foray. I started this job, and I walked into this kitchen. I was like, right, where's this chef to then? Come on out, talk to me about these ingredients. And people started looking up from their desks, looking up from the workbenches. They were doing their mise en place, they were prepping away. And they almost shook their head. Like these films, like these cartoon films where this big black cloud comes along and all these like little mice and animals
Like
start
freaking
hiding
out.
away. They're going,
Yeah.
no, like this. And so that was the response I was getting. And all of a sudden, this chef, who was shorter than I was, but dead intimidating, came around this corner. He was like, what the fuck are you doing in my kitchen? How dare you come in here and ask for me? Who are you anyway? And he literally manhandled me out the door. And I was like, well, how dare he? I went back to the office, and I said to my boss, who was an ex-chef, I said, you've got a really angry customer out there. I said, I cannot believe he manhandled me out of the kitchen. All I was going to do is introduce myself. He said, well, what time did you go in? I was like, 1:00 in the afternoon. And he was like,
Right.
right, okay, you just learned lesson number 1: never ever go into a kitchen between 12 and 2, like ever. And I was like, fuck, I love this industry. This is amazing. Like, I've got so much to learn. And there was something about that since that moment, I made it my mission to be able to demonstrate that I had a great understanding of how the kitchen dynamics worked, how ingredients worked, seasonalities, modern gastronomy ingredients, so that I wasn't just this sort of chatty sales guy who would go into a kitchen and irritate someone. I'd actually be there to support and to guide and to educate and to help. And so that was really that was my first foray. I ended up running sales teams and building business for wholesalers for 8 years. In the end, 8-9 years. Yeah. I spent more time in kitchens than I did in other sectors, which was, yeah.
Well, it's great that you figured out that if you're going to sell to the people that are going to serve this food, you need to understand what you're selling and like speak their language. So there's some people that don't do that. They're just like a wholesale person. They come in, they're like, here's what the bulk order I have. We have this discount if you do it this way or order from this vendor. They don't understand why it's important certain ingredients come from certain places, what's trending, things like that. That's really crucial that you figured that out.
Yeah, well, you have to. This is such a fast-paced profession, right? Whether you're front of house, back of house, whether you're in housekeeping, it doesn't matter. You're on a tight deadline. You can't suffer fools. You can't mess around with BS. Like, you have to be able to get the
Hmm.
information and the service and the products, etc., at a convenient time, a time that's quick, effective, that's good quality. And for me, like, I didn't want to be one of these guys who come in and go, "Yeah, I got a half price deal on this. Take it off my hands, and I'll do you something else for free."
Yeah.
It was like, look, if you're using this particular product, I can actually maximize your budget by actually swapping you onto this product. It's got better application. Perhaps it's a certain type of flour with a higher protein content. It's got better gluten in it. It rises quick. And for me, it was like learning a whole new language, because you had to be able to, in a very short period of time, show your prospective clients or your clients that you knew what you were talking about, and for them to trust you, because they didn't have time to fuck about. They had to get that information. They had to get
Right.
it right. And they had to trust you, because if you let them down, they're in the shit with 300 covers. And so I didn't want to be that person who let someone down. And so I just threw myself into learning. And I ended up purveying white truffles from the Blue Mountains in Italy, and finger limes from certain regions of Australia. And we have this thing called buzz buttons over here. I don't know if you get them over in the States, but they're like Szechuan flower
No.
heads. So they look like little daisies, and they come from the Szechuan pepper plant. But you put them in your mouth, and they have it's like licking a 9-volt battery, right? Your mouth starts to tingle. You start to salivate more. And it's like a chemical reaction that the plant gives off in your mouth to stop you from eating it. But it's not harmful, but it's like a 4D experience. And so we used to try and inspire people with those as well. Check them out,
I
buzz
would,
buttons.
I was like, I swear, if that's something I saw on a menu, I would 100% do that, simply because when else am I going to pop something in my mouth that's in a safe environment that they're selling to me? They say this is safe to do, and have an experience like that
Yeah, it's
while
cool.
dining. That's
It,
incredible.
so what I used to do is, again, because it was quite a new ingredient. Not many people knew how the applications would work. So for the servers and for mixologists, what I used to do is I'll take in a few buzz buttons that are dried out. I used to take out the pollen, so take off all the greenery from it, blitz it up with some sugar, and then you would rim the rim of a
Cocktail glass.
glass. Yeah. So as you were drinking, you get the flavor and the sort of the texture of the liquid from the cocktail, but all of a sudden your lips would start to tingle and your mouth would start to tingle, like there was electric inside it as well. So you got a full 3D experience of consuming that product. And that's what I used to just love,
Wow.
watching people's eyes light up when I would explain the use of these new ingredients. So I fell in
That
love. I
is
fell in
so
love with it.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, then, yeah, I mean, you literally got like bit by the hospitality bug. It's so stupid people say that, but it's true. There's like something really incredible about seeing people's reactions to things. And that's why a lot of us are in the industry. Is like, I love that what I'm doing makes someone's day. Hopefully I'm making their day, not like making it worse. But I've done that a couple times. Yeah, it's a really cool experience that not a lot of industries have. So I love that you found your own little like worlds and sales into hospitality and made it your own. That's incredible. I love that. I didn't know that at all.
No. Well, I mean, again, it's I don't know. The adrenaline of working in bars and nightclubs was enough to satisfy my curiosity. And my mum, she used to work in pubs, and she was also a carer. So she used to work in pubs in the evening and then look after um, physically disabled or elderly people, as well as part of her job. So I guess when you actually look back, my personality type is that I'm also quite caring and want to do something for other
Hmm.
people, but also I do enjoy that buzz of hospitality, and then to be able to serve ingredients and inspire future generations with new products. And even back 10 years ago, I guess, really, and where the Burnt Chef project comes in and is quite similar, is I was saying, why are you using that ingredient, or why do you use that ingredient in that way? Why don't you consider something different? And it was like, well, we've always done it this way. And I'm like, oh, yes, but there's
Always done it right.
Yeah, like clarified butter. I once brought a product into a chef. He was a good mate of mine. And I said, look, you're clarifying your own butter for hollandaise. Okay, every single time you're melting it down, you're taking the fat off, etc., etc. I said, it's costing you an absolute fortune. Why are you doing that? He goes, well, because that's how the only way you make hollandaise. I said, no. I said, have you ever used that like pourable butter? Over here in the UK, if you said pourable butter to a chef, they'd be like, "Get the fuck out! You are not allowed in my kitchen. Do not insult me. This is a craft." And
Crap. I love that.
it is like this is how it's properly done, and do not bastardize it. And so I took him in this pourable bottle one day, and I made a hollandaise with his Thermomix, and I sat there and I made it with this, and he wouldn't even pay attention. He wasn't interested at all. He was like, you're wasting your time. And I gave it to him, and he was like, wait, so I've just cut my costs in half. I've cut my prep time down significantly because the product's already clarified effectively. And and I had to ask how much it was, and then started using it as a product. But it's that sort of thing. Like, I just enjoyed going, what's your perspective? Why is it that way? And how can I improve or develop and work with you on that? And from an ingredients perspective, that worked really, really well for me.
I love it. Yeah, I know that Americans do a lot of things that probably make everyone across the world cringe, but I do know specifically about ingredients and doing things the right way, not the easy way. Sometimes people are like really afraid of trying that. So was there a catalyst though that prompted the concept for the Burnt Chef? Was there like a certain restaurant or place that you went to that was like, hey, we could help you in this capacity, or I could help you in this capacity?
There was a number of catalysts. I mean, if you look back 7-8 years ago, I was very much a science and data type guy, right? If you told me that manifestation and serendipity existed, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I don't have to see it to believe it. I have to see scientific proof, otherwise you're talking out your ass. And I look back now, and I think to myself, how many different variables came into play at around about the same sort of time that allowed me to be able to develop the Burnt Chef project. And I think one of them was my own personal experience. So I ended up becoming quite unwell with like an identity crisis. So I really struggled with. I became quite depressed, got into quite a big hole, and started self-medicating using drugs and alcohol to be able to keep my performance up and to keep the facade to friends and family, etc. And it culminated in crisis. And at the same time, I was still managing a sales team, still going out selling ingredients. But actually, everything within my head and my world was just completely and utterly just being torn down day by day. And my sense of self-worth was awful. It was at an all-time low. And I even tried to leave my family. I just tried to take myself off somewhere, and it really got that bad. And when I acknowledged that I needed help and tried to get help, it was so challenging. The stigma was so strong. You hear it all the time. Oh, I don't need the help just yet, or someone else is more needing of me, or perhaps I'm not really that bad. Perhaps it is just me, and no one can help me. All of these things were going through my head. And I was quite lucky. I was able to pay for private help, and it was before mental health became much more prominent in the healthcare systems. But even getting therapy, I booked a therapist as far away from friends or family as I could possibly find, so that no one knew I'd gone. I sat outside. Yeah, honestly, like, I made sure that when I picked a therapist, it wasn't based on their pricing, or it wasn't based on their previous experience or specialism. It was based on their location, to make sure that it was somewhere that I knew people wouldn't see me. And even getting to the therapist's office, I was sat outside for about half an hour, just checking my mirrors, making sure that no one had followed me. It genuinely felt so shamed by the fact that I was unwell, and that I didn't. I felt so isolated and lonely that and the stigma of that was so strong. I tried to hide. No, I booked fake appointments in my diary. My boss was a really lovely, supportive bloke, and I booked fake appointments for the entire period in my diary. So he thought I was out on appointments. I didn't even
On
tell him
calls.
that I was going to go see a therapist. So yeah,
Well, being a man alone, I'm sure was, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just like picturing as like a husband and a father having to sneak away to take care of yourself, is that alone is a hurdle, a mental hurdle. Be like, all right, let me plan my day away from my family to go get help so I can be a better partner in this relationship and father and all those things. I can't, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that.
I appreciate that, but I came to the realization. I sat down in the chair, and she said, "What do you want to get out of your sessions?" I said, "Well, I just want to walk around with an empty space in my head. I'm so envious of everyone that I pass in the street. We're skipping down the road with no worries, no concerns, no internal monologue, no negativity." And she said, "Kris, everyone has, those thought processes. Everyone has an internal monologue. Some people are well, some people aren't well. But actually talking about it is the first key, and feeling like you're heard and understood is going to help make you better." I said, "Well, if so many people experience difficulty and you've not been sat in the chair for 26 years waiting for me to walk in," I said, "Why aren't more people talking?" And she said, "Well, that's mental illness, that's stigma that's associated with it. That's all the thoughts and feelings that you've had." And so whilst I went through that, what I slowly started to realize, and it sounds, I'm an intelligent bloke. I'd like to say that, I think I'm pretty intelligent. Not more than Albert Einstein or anyone like that, but I've got a good head on my shoulders. But I genuinely didn't know that other people on the planet experienced similar emotions and thought processes that I did. I genuinely thought I was broken, damaged on my own. And that was reinforced by machoism. My partner's family, they're farmers, so they're very strong, and they don't show much sign of emotion, and I genuinely thought that I was broken. And so, coming out of that therapist room, I suddenly realized, shit, how many other people are feeling this inner turmoil and not able to speak about it? And I realized, God, if I could just reach one more person and help them, then they won't have to go through what I went through. So that was one of the conduits. The other conduit was I was looking at the colleges that we were working with. I used to work with a lot of colleges in the local area to try and inspire them into culinary profession, and the numbers were starting to dwindle. People weren't seeing this as a viable career choice. They were, my friends in the trade were trying to leave at the age of 30, 31, 32 because of health issues. And I just thought, fuck, this cannot go on. Like, someone needs to do something that is going to change the course of this. I went to a straight talking chef mate of mine. I said, one day I'm going to be on stage teaching people how to run businesses, talking about mental health and well-being, specifically so that we can improve the sustainability of this industry. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Kris," he said, "I love you. You're a fucking idiot." He said, "You can't change anything." He said, you're talking out your ass. Just get out of my kitchen. Like, you're never going to change a single thing. It is the way it is. The best thing you can do is save yourself." And I went, no. I really think that there's something here. I think there's so much opportunity. And that's really where the Burnt Chef project was born. It was a photography campaign because I couldn't get people to talk. Every time I tried to open up to specifically a chef in the early days, they were like, "Fuck that. Just don't talk about it. Get over it on yourself, man up, you'll be all right. And if we talk about it, we'll lose our jobs. So don't say anything." And so the photography campaign that I started was designed to grow organic traction to get people interested, but no one actually had to say that they experienced mental illness. And yeah, the rest is history. It just blew up. And here we are 5.5 years later.
It's crazy that you had your own kind of like epiphany of like, oh, I'm not the only person that feels like alone and crazy at the same time, but have to pretend like everything's functioning. Because as a mom, I can tell you postpartum depression is like very similar. And working in hospitality, if after you have a baby here in the US, there's no maternity leave if you work in the hospitality industry. And if you do have it, you're very lucky and you're back to work like that. Well, postpartum depression can go from before the baby's born up to 2 years, if not longer, for people who don't get help. I personally went through postpartum depression and during the pandemic. And then I had it again with my son. Having to come out of that cloud because you're supposed to be so happy, things are great, things are wonderful, and like, oh, I love being a mom, but I'm like dying on the inside because I hate the way I look. My kid cries. I think it's my fault. I can't take care of my other child because I had a C-section. All these things like pile in. And then when you realize that you're not the only person on the planet that's going through that, you kind of feel like, well, why are we all suffering in it though quietly? And I've been very vocal about going through those things because I know how lonely it can feel. And I very, very much believe that you're stronger together. Even if you're suffering, at least you're not suffering alone. And suffering in
Mm.
silence is way worse. It's so hard. And having to bring these conversations for me about being a mother in the industry is like super important because I know so many of my friends that have gone back to work and they're breastfeeding, you're behind the bar and you're like lactating, you're like, Jesus Christ, can I get a break from people? And you can't, it's like, what the heck do I do?
Yeah.
And no one understands. But like for a lot of us, we're like, no, I do get it. Go take a break, go sit down, pump, because that person's going to be fine if I jump behind the bar and take your job for a few minutes. And like really breaking these conversations because people are also uncomfortable, like that are male managers. Like, how do I address that my female bartender needs to go pump? You give her a 25-minute break and you go behind the bar. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Don't be
Yeah.
embarrassed.
But this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, a big part of the work that we do, whether that is with mental health and well-being, whether that's with subjects such as what you've mentioned, menopause, race, sexual orientation, it doesn't matter. I think you're understanding that you're not going to be an expert in everything, understanding that if you're a man, you're never going to, I mean, you might, but most likely you're never going to know what it's like to be, to lactate and to have to pump and to have
Yeah.
all the other physiological and psychological things that go along with bringing a child into this world or not in some cases. So coming with a proposed solution doesn't always have to be the case. Sometimes it's just about having that curiosity to be able to go, I haven't got a fucking clue what you're going through right now, but what do you need and how can I help you? And you tell me.
Right. And setting those standards before someone joins the company is also like really crucial. Like, hey, just so you know, if you become pregnant while working here, these are things that we offer for you. We don't offer maternity leave, but when you come back to work, there is going to be designated break times for you. Support staff will be there, to help you thrive and succeed. Because a lot of us love being in the industry, but it's just a really hard thing to jump back into when your body just went through the wildest 9 months plus of your life. And then, not to mention, your attitude and shortness with people is like this big. And having to like, hey, if you are having a hot moment, you can take a break. It's okay. Because like you're running on fumes at this point.
Yeah. And I think that's the interesting thing, isn't it? That
So those are the things that I've been working on. Yeah.
well, good. And I appreciate you sharing them as well, because I think it's normal, it's natural in life to be able to become quite blinkered with either your own objectives, your own shit, or whatever it might be. And there's conversations like this, and it's actually hearing that perspective that you go, okay, fuck, yeah, I just need to be a little bit more mindful, a little bit more accommodating, a little bit more curious, and because you get distracted, don't you? You're so busy working out what's in front of your grill, you don't actually start to look elsewhere.
Right. And I think that's also, I think, a misconception about Burn Chef is like, are we only about like fuck stigma? That's like such a brash thing to say, right? But at the end of the day, the whole thing is providing resources. So people that do have these mental health issues or physical issues or whatever it is, there's something that your team members can pull from to have these uncomfortable conversations. I'm not saying you have to pull shift drinks from your staff. But if you've noticed that someone has 1 or 2 shift drinks and things are spiraling, how are you going to address that the next day? Not in that moment, but the next day. And making it really accessible for people that run restaurants. Because a lot of us don't have HRs. It's hard to find an HR company that's affordable or to bring it in. And as you said earlier, people don't like change. Well, I never had HR before, so why do I need HR now? You don't really. You just need to have these tools that we can bring to you to succeed.
Yeah. And I think going back to the original question about the catalyst for the Burnt Chef project, and I've
Mm.
never actually explained this in any degree of detail to anyone before, but the impacts of working in hospitality and having those sort of environments that aren't tailored for individuals, that aren't set up and supportive in a certain way, is that ultimately you become physically or mentally unwell, or you leave the industry. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case for anyone, because I could have left this industry years ago, but I chose to stay because I love it, and I believe it has a good future. But mental illness and was one of the big drivers of setting the project up. But actually, everything that you see from the Burnt Chef project is because I didn't prescribe it. I didn't come in and say, oh yeah, this is what you guys need. No, it was through conversations. It was through keeping my mouth shut, listening to what people were saying, asking them why, asking them how they felt, asking them what they could see and do differently. And so the Burnt Chef project, as you say, it isn't just about mental health. It's about addressing all of the imbalances within hospitality so that we can curate and take charge of an industry that for a long time has just ticked along as the way it's been done before. But actually now we can have a say, we can have the education, we can have the support to make this the brilliant profession that we know it can be, that doesn't cost relationships, health, lives, money. We can do it sustainably.
It's the relationships thing was a huge one for me. I never had a healthy relationship in my 20s, ever. It wasn't until I met my husband, ironically, in the restaurant that I was working at. However, I'd always been in really bad relationships. And the friends that have survived those relationships are people that are very dear and near to my heart. But there's people that came and went all the time. And boyfriends, I wouldn't even consider them that, because our relationship was we went to work together, we drank together, went home, and then like it was a really vicious cycle. There was not, we never talked about things that were like going on in my life or how was I feeling. And I dated a chef and it was so unhealthy and constantly battling, that front of house, back of house mentality. And if people that do have inner working relationships, that's fine. But are you able to like separate your relationship outside of work? Or is it strictly a working relationship? And it wasn't until I left where I actually moved back to where I used to live. When I left this city, moved to Chicago, I was kind of able to see like where my shortcomings were. And it was, I didn't know myself. I had no understanding of an actual relationship with people or friends or men. And I didn't have relationship or understanding of what alcohol was. I was just abusing it. I was just drinking it because everyone else did. I didn't really understand alcohol. And then I started to become immersed like in the beer scene, and I understood the process. And then I understood food. I understood food. And it really changed my perspective of the industry. I'm like, it can be a successful place where I can grow my career. But what I was in before was just really unhealthy. And no one said anything to me. They just kind of let me putz along. And those that did speak up, I like pushed them away. And now they're my dear friends because they're like, hey, I think that you could improve here. Maybe just change your surroundings. And that's what I did. And just because, I was one person that came out of it, not everybody does. And I've lost friends along the way that never got out of it. They were just in that stupid, vicious cycle of like unhealthy relationships and enabling one another just to live that like crazy cycle.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing again, because again, it's that open dialogue, isn't it? It's
Mm-hmm.
how many other people are in a similar situation now or have been who go, yeah, I recognize that, I understand that, but how do I change it? Like, what's the difference? Oh, perhaps it will never change. Perhaps I'm always destined for this type of life. But
Mm-hmm.
as you clearly articulated, it's not always like that. You haven't been a solid. A big thing for me at the moment is having always been in a shell and pretending to be other people, pretending to fit in, pretending, not even having any core values. A big thing for me now is, how do I inspire people that the role that they are in, and I don't just mean the role as in terms of professional role, but the role that they have in life currently, it doesn't necessarily have to be signed, sealed, and delivered for the rest of your life. If you want
Right.
to try something and do something, there is no one that's able to stop you, no one at all. And even lack of knowledge, lack of experience, lack of funds is never something that should stop you, ever. It might take you a little bit longer, you might not know how to get there,
Hmm.
but your potential is infinite. And I think that anyone who feels stuck or feels downtrodden or feels that they are in an unhealthy relationship and they can't see the wood through the trees, listening to podcasts like this, listening to open dialogue should reassure you that that isn't your lot in life, and that you can change that. Is you need to start thinking, or my advice would be to start thinking, picturing yourself in a different situation, and start believing that you can be in a different situation. You don't even need to know how to get there or have a full plan, but just know that you can be in a different situation, and that will release you from being stuck, as many of us have been at different stages in our life,
Hmm.
right?
Well, like you said, you started as a photography, so you wouldn't have to explain your situation. And now you have 200 plus ambassadors, with like 56,000 followers on Instagram. Is that what the ticker says behind you? People
Uh,
believing in this mission. Is that what it says? 56,000?
yeah, 56, 6. Yeah, it's yeah, and
It's
then
wild.
again, it is. One of the first things I did when I set up the photography campaign, and I started hearing the stories so frequently, and I thought, if I could stand up in front of 10 people and talk about what I went through, it might relate to a few people and hopefully save them. And I did a talk. My first talk, I was shaking like a shitting dog. It was I was terrified, and I expected only sort of 10, 15 people to turn up, and there were 65 people that had come from around the industry, outside the industry, to this tiny little restaurant. The restaurant was so small that there was only standing room by the time we finished. It was heaving, and I just stood up and I started waffling, and I started sharing my experiences, and I shared the impact that it had, and the impact of getting help. And the people that came up to me afterwards were even individuals who said, "Oh, I just thought people needed to man up," or "I actually didn't realize that,
Mhm.
but I've been going through a few of the things you have." And the conversations that started and ricocheted from that one event was so powerful and so frequent that I was like, and I remember going back to work the next day, and my boss said to me, he said, "I didn't realize you were doing the photography." He said, "It's a good thing you're doing, but come back to work, focus on work full time. Let someone else take this on. Someone else can run with this." And I went, "Nah, this is bitten me now. There's something in my gut instinct that tells me I have to do this." He said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I've got no idea." I said, "Take photos, raise a bit of money through some like merchandise, and I'll pay for some mental health training in the local area." And people just kept saying, "What next?" And I went, "Don't know, but let me ponder and come back to you." And what you see is just a series of what next. Okay, so we've done we've provided 55,000 modules of e-learning in the last 2.5 years. What next? Well, let's do more. Let's provide that to the future generation, the colleges around the world. Let's change the learning material so it's more like TikTok or Instagram stories, so it gets better engagement, so that
Mhm.
people learn quicker and in the format. Let's launch a global therapy service that's multilingual and free for hospitality people. Okay, that's good, but what's next? And that's literally
It's
what
funny. It's
plagued
like, well,
me.
let's let this marinate and let's see how we're doing here. And the thing that you said though is how it's evolved. Like you start with photography and now we're talking about like video content, right? How people are absorbing information. For our industry, people, the Instagram craze of photography, taking photos of people's food, and people kind of got bit by this. Let's bring influencers in, right? And this whole layer that people were not expecting happened because of social media of like, we have to be Instagram perfect because if not, we're not going to get influencers. And that added a layer, I know personally, to a lot of my professional friends of like, it's not just Yelp, which is, takes you down people writing negative comments. This is like people are reaching the globe about your food or your service, and they're taking photos and videos. And it really plays this like crazy like mind psyche fuck on you. Like it's like of like having to be perfect in all these ways because it happens like that. And it's hard to be in that moment or like marinate in that moment, like I said, about like, let's just focus on right now and all the wonderful things that we're doing because the trends are going to change again. But we can focus on, all right, so when people coming and taking Instagram photos, what do our staff need to know? How are we training them? How are we preparing them for that? Like, how do we engage with these people? Because the next trend is going to happen before you know it. And the Burnt Chef is going to keep up with it. But like, give us a moment to be in this moment right now. And it's going to change in 5 seconds.
Well, I think one of the things that working in hospitality taught me is the work rate. Like you come into hospital. Well, I still remember when I first, even just from a rep's perspective, you come in and the speed in which people worked and required things because it never sleeps, right? And if your delivery is short, you need to get that sorted straight away. You need to jump in the car and go get it sorted. And so I've kind of kept up that work rate when I started the project, which was we're losing people hand over fist. I mean, I can't begin, and I don't want to sound like I'm dramatizing, but I cannot begin to tell you the sheer volume of people we hear about who've lost their life in hospitality. It is, it is truly terrifying. And the worst thing is that the data from governments doesn't back it up. You look at the governments and details in the States or in the UK, and what we're hearing about doesn't match up with the data that we're being told. So I have to work, and we have to work furiously without risking our own health and well-being, but we have to work furiously to make sure that we get in front of as many people as possible. We have to be able to educate them. We have to provide them with crisis intervention support and therapeutic support. This has to be done because what we're fighting, is a war effectively. And it was 10 years ago, it was a personal war for myself, but we're now at war with something that is taking significant amount of lives. So we have to work quickly, and we have to be swift and decisive and militant. We have to be with our guerrilla marketing, the fuck stigma, the giant elephants, the omnipresence of marketing, the 7 social media posts a week. We have to be everywhere at all times because we can't afford to miss anyone else. So I'd like to marinate. I'd like to sit and look back and go, okay. But as I said to someone the other day, we don't do this for recognition. We don't do this for a reward. We do it because it needs to be done, and we're the ones to do it. We're going to be here for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. This will be passed on generation by generation because this is a monumental task and we've got work to do. In service of service, right? That's what we do. We're here to support and help.
Yeah, I think to what I was I say it's crazy you said that the backing information doesn't match what's actually happening. I think there's a lot of people when it comes to, again, to the mental health part of it, or like people taking their lives or falling, victim to their vices, is no one talks about it out loud. So they're not being classified as to how they lost their life. But for us that work in the industry, like I can just tell you the people I know that have taken their lives like that. They were at work one day and they weren't the next day. And felt like about the marinating about why don't you recognize the work that they have done at the Burnt Chef? Like, look at these resources that are there. And if you want to be a part of pushing it forward, then why don't you get involved and share what we currently have with your staff and then help us evolve it to the next iteration? Like I said, the trends are always changing, and absorbing information is like, it's so accessible to absorb the information. Like you said, it started with photos, now there's videos and all sorts of different things in between. It does make me sad when you think about how many people that do take their lives or because of it, because it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be as simple as like someone just goes off after their shift and then they don't come back. It should be like, hey, are we checking fuel? But again, that's the culture that a lot of us have been in, is like our work relationships are work relationships. And then when it extends to the late night, and then after that, we part ways. Are you picking up on any of the cues of what they're sharing with you? Are you watching their how they act at work? Are they getting short with a table for no apparent reason? Like there's things that you can pay attention to, but we're also so busy that it's hard to look beyond what's right in front of us. Um, and that's what's it's so frustrating for me is like as a manager, I know that's my job is to be the eyes and ears everywhere and like watch our staff and are you checking in? Do you do reviews? Like there's so many simple things that can be done. Like putting a note on the walk-in, like, hey, if you're feeling this way, this number you can call or text, no one's going to judge you for it. And we don't know about it. And it costs us nothing. And it costs you nothing to ask for help. And if you do need help and you want me to help you, I'll be there to guide you in the direction to get it. Like it's just it's so frustrating because like it's so simple to offer the help. It just we need to take a moment and pause and be like, are we doing that? Are we doing our jobs as supervisors and as teammates? I can say probably half people are, half people aren't.
Yeah,
Due to the numbers, like you said.
it's hard. I mean, we did a study over here in the UK fairly recently, and the numbers are quite. Yeah, well, I mean, 69% of 2,000 people surveyed were experiencing mental health issues, and then 1 in 2 of those had searched harmful content to do with suicide or self-harm. So if you're looking at that in terms of numbers, you know, that's 690 odd people out of 2,000, effectively.
I know, like here in the US, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'd say the pandemic here, like, did a number on people. And I know across the pond, the same thing, like, the world just stopped. And a lot of us, our lives were like frozen. When are we returning to work? When's my income going to resolve? I'm still reeling from that. Like, loss of income for 10 months was catastrophic. And I was pregnant and I had a baby to take care of. And it was the government only offered so much aid and my company could only pay me this much and things like that. And a lot of us are family people. We have more than one child. And it's like, okay, I'm not providing for my family. So I'm not providing at all. I'm failing. And people are still reeling. And the industry has changed when it comes to dining. And the conversation here is like getting rid of tips or not having tax on tips. And it's like your livelihood is constantly being toyed with. And it's like, oh my God, I have to get out because it's going to be gone potentially. And it doesn't, again, it's just like, how did we get here? Well, we got here because we just let shit happen for eons. And now people are like, oh, the hospitality industry exists. We just thought you guys waited tables and that sort of thing. Like we're real people with real families and all sorts of real shit going on in our lives. The pandemic just amplified it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, whether you love it or hate it, things like Boiling Point and The Bear have those who have never had a frisson with hospitality before always say, oh my God, I can't watch it. It makes me so anxious. I didn't realize it was like that. But it's only dramatized, right? It's just for TV. And you're like, no, there's a lot of similarities. And yeah. Like it wasn't until I met the director of Boiling Point and Stephen Graham and his wife, I actually watched Boiling Point, and it was a year and a half into the film being out. I couldn't sit and watch it myself because I was like, oh, I'm dealing with this shit every single day, let alone, you know, having to sit there and put myself through it in my own and spare time. But there was something that you said that really resonated with me is that we've allowed this to happen. And it goes back to your point about, look, check out what we've got first before you ask us for something else, because we do get a lot of people. The one I like is the comments on social media, which is do better. They message our team
So
and be like, just do better, be better. And you're like, how many people have you helped? How many people have you helped with therapy in the last 24 hours? But there is this almost expectation as someone else will help this, someone else will fix this, someone else's problem. It's not my problem. But we have to acknowledge that if you want a long-term career, if you care for a human being, if you want to see economies continue to, you know, we'll see what the Fed says this week with their rate cuts, or maybe not. If you want to see just life continue in its normal way, then like let's look at how you support and how you have a say and an opportunity to change an industry. I mean, yeah, Christ, 5-6 years ago, people would have said, there's no way that hospitality will talk about mental health and well-being, and there's no way that people will start working reasonable hours. You know, it's never going to happen. And look where we are now. And if you're still sat there going, "Oh, it will never change. It will never change," you're not adding anything to the fire to be able to help,
Hmm.
fuel that change. Um, and you're right. COVID's done a number on people, and we now need to be a little bit more mindful of others, and to be able to take a role in society and fucking help us, like, you know.
Yeah, and I think so I live in a very touristy town, and and this, the season's coming to a close, but there's a lot of people that live here year round, and my girlfriend Julie's been on the show and we've talked about it. There's times when people come into the restaurant that it's like, do they not understand that you're coming to our place of work and we are doing our best to serve you? And even the customers, I feel like they didn't realize, like, you treat us like shit sometimes. Like, sometimes you're the problem also. We're there to give you a great experience, and we're trying to train our staff. And some people do a great job and some don't. But you berating a staff member isn't helping the cause either, because I don't go to your place of work and like tell you that you did a shit job selling me that couch. Like, it's your fault that I don't like that couch. Well, no, it's your fault that you ordered something you didn't like. I just, I served it to you. And that definitely has changed also. Either you get people that come to the town that really respect how hard everyone works, that's a tourist season, it's nonstop go, or the people that just don't give a crap at all and they're just going to be that way. But for those that have kind of changed this mentality of like, wow, these people are really struggling, they're working really, really hard. It's been like really refreshing, because it means a lot to people that live here and work here. It's like, we're trying to give you the best experience while you're on vacation, but we also expect that we expect respect in return. And it's not that hard. And that's another change that people can do that aren't in hospitality, that I would advocate for, is that when you go out and dine these places, pay attention to all the little nuances, like the menu item offerings or the way that they've been trained in tips of service and things like that, and acknowledging it, because it does make a world of difference. I think that's also a huge thing, is getting the customers to understand what it's like. So maybe watching the bear is good for you. Being like, oh my
Mm.
God, that is rough. Being haunted by the ticking sound and you go to bed at night. Like, those are real things. We want to give you the best experience. That's why we do what we do. We love being around people. Most of us do. If you
Yeah.
don't, you're in the wrong industry. But
Yeah, I was going to say, I was doing a talk yesterday in London, and we were talking about some of the complexities of the industry. And I said, look, for all of its negative points, I said you should try working in a call center selling something to someone that they didn't even want in the first place. I said, you know, try holding down a job like that for a few years and realizing how dead inside you feel, before
oh
we
my
start
God,
accosting.
seriously.
Yeah, it was tough. I left at work every day and felt like I had to wash myself with like a scouring pad just because I felt so dirty. Um,
I'm
but
sure.
this is an industry built on heart and built on passion and creativity and drive. The only downside with all of that is that we're fueling others and we're keeping others warm by setting fire to ourselves. And so we need to learn how to be able to balance our
Mm.
sheer determination and drive and passion and everything else that we have going for this industry. We also need to understand that that's not limitless. There are limits to what we're able to offer in order to keep that sustained. So we just need to learn the power of saying no. I think is important. We're very good at saying yes sir, no sir,
Mm.
yes ma'am, we can sit you down a table of 20 when you've only booked for 5. No, you turned up 2 hours early for your table, but don't worry, we'll get it fixed. I
We'll
think
figure it
what
out.
we need to do is
Right.
learn the ability to be able to say I can't do that, it's going to push me too much, or I'm not able to do it at this moment in time, or I have to focus on myself right now, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's funny that, so Jim Taylor and I talked about this like 2 years ago. If your restaurant can't handle a certain amount of people, you just can't handle it. You don't have to accommodate every single person, because what you're doing is you're instantly setting up the entire restaurant to light on fire, from the host who's going to start crying because there's 45 people in her face yelling at her, to the kitchen that's now going to kill the host for doing that. And then the manager has to put out fires in all the departments, and no one goes home happy. Everyone had like the most tense experience. So if you can't do it, just say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. This is what time you're supposed to be here. And my covers can only go this high, because if you want the best experience from service to food, this is what I have to do. But having that ability to do that is what people need to work on. And that's where training and tools and setting standards and expectations is crucial to sustain. Because, like I said, like we've said, the burnt chef is so much more than just like fuck stigma. It's, do you have these things put in place to help you have a successful run of service? And if you can't, then maybe that's the first step. And how can we help facilitate that? Can we be the bad guys? Start the conversation so it doesn't have to be you. Those are things that burnt chef ambassadors can do, is come to your place and kind of say, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today. I'm a third party. So if you have a problem, come to me and let's go from there.
Yeah.
And that's how I've kind of explained myself as well. It's like, I can be the bad guy because I've lived it. It's been hard and it totally took a toll on me. And I don't want that to happen to your staff.
Yeah. But yeah. And that's, again, I'm full of pride of the fact that, you know, we've got passionate and motivated individuals such as yourself who are able to do that. But I think opening this dialogue and having conversations about change and mental health and well-being and work-life balance and all of these important conversations are only ever positive. And I think so many operators look at this as like, oh shit, this is going to be a can of worms that we open. It's going to be, so much trouble is going to come from this. But we've only ever found success. Like, we've only ever found happier people, happier customers, better profit margins. You know, it's a win-win scenario for every single party involved. It's incredible that we still have to be seen as the bad guys, or you know, how dare they shine a light on something that we don't talk about in this industry? You know, let's leave those skeletons in the closet, shall we? And you're like, yeah, and how's that working out for you? It's starting to stink over there.
Right. It's funny. I've been questioned before of like why I'm so open. I was like, well, because my life was shit for like 10 years. If you want me to be honest. So the person that you knew 10 years ago is not the person that you know now. And had someone been there to have these conversations, my life might have been a little less stressful. I might have had a lot more self-worth. I might have saved a lot more money. I would have been okay saying no to experiences and situations. But I was in a world that I was completely consumed by because everybody was living the same way. Nobody lived life differently. Hindsight's 2020. I could be having lots of money and no financial crisis and all those things, but you know, say Levy, it's life. It happened. But now we can move forward and put a change in place so the next generation of hospitality professionals don't have to have that really rough go. I mean, I don't want to have a pan thrown at my head, but I also want to be able to get yelled at and know that that person doesn't hate me. That's just the heat of the moment. Let's have a conversation afterwards. That's the difference. Not being smacked across the face or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that lawless, the way that things we get told every so often. I say all the time, we get told every so often, oh, it's no longer like that in hospitality. It's changed. It's changed. You know, no longer can you throw a pan at someone and, oh, that doesn't go on anymore. I'm like, it fucking does. It still happens in a lot of places, more than it should in terms of proportion. And I think it's very easy to go, yeah, we've done all those changes in the last 3 or 4 years. That's fine. You know, we can stop now. We can stop. The next generation are going to be fine. You're like, nah, not yet. I think we've still got a lot of work to do, but
not yet. I think that's a perfect way of saying it. It's no, not yet. Like, there's still work to be done. If there wasn't, we wouldn't be having this conversation and people wouldn't be uncomfortable having them.
No, I've always said that when the true measure of success for the Burnt Chef project is when I make myself redundant. When I've no longer got a job, I know
I
our work
love
is
that.
complete.
Oh, that's so great. It's totally true. So I guess that answered my question. Has the Burnt Chef project exceeded your initial expectations?
Yeah, I was only taking photos in the back rooms of hotels and restaurants. Like, yeah, it has. My goals have become a lot larger. The enormity of and the severity of the issue is much larger than I was naively expecting. But I've also learned through the ability and experience of myself, and also the backing of my team and our ambassadors, that we can rise to those challenges and that we can continue to grow and develop. And we're currently looking at how we set up charitable statuses in different parts of the world so that we can start accessing funding from those countries. The services and the portfolio of tools and educational resources that we have in place currently, they're okay. They're all right. They're good. But other people do them. It's been done before. So let's look at what else we can do. Let's look at how we can dial this up. Let's look at how we can lead the finance sector or construction or other industries and go, hey, look at us. Look at this for an idea. Have you considered doing this? Small things like ECG heart monitors. We now do ECG heart monitors that hospitality people can wear for 7 days. And after those 7 days, they get their own personal stress coaching. And you can see
it
on a
makes
graph.
me anxious just like think. Yeah, that makes me so anxious. I can't even imagine watching what my heart would have been like running a restaurant right now.
It's amazing. Yeah, right. Like you are in this constant state. And then your recovery, you don't slip into recovery for hours afterwards. But you know what? Why can't we provide a blueprint that says if you work X and you do a normal service and you relax by drinking a bottle of wine or, sitting down doom scrolling, this is how long stress and sleep will take and recovery will take to happen. However, here are some models that we can provide you with that allow you to be able to decrease that. For example, if you cut your working week down by 8 hours, it means that you're more likely to enter the recovery stage of sleep. Or if you go for a run, you'll drop it by 20%. Or if you do mindfulness and meditation, you become more resilient to stress hormone. Like all of this stuff. And you provide that blueprint to people so that no longer you finish service and you're in this state of, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Oh my God. Oh, the ticket machine's in my head still. But you can go, hold on a second. Some guy once said that if I go for a run or a brief walk and I listen to some calming music, that will drop my heart rate down and allow me to get into recovery 20% quicker. And all of a sudden it doesn't feel like it's infinite, So it's things like that. It's research pieces that we're doing with universities on imposter syndrome and burnout, leading the way in terms of revolutionary data for the hospitality community around the globe. So we never we never stop. And as much as my team hate it, it's about thinking about, I say they hate it. They wouldn't have left. They wouldn't have stayed with me if they hated it. But
yeah,
it's not sufficient just to say that'll do. We've got much more to do. And we're looking forward to getting stuck in and getting to work, really.
Oh, I love that. I think the studies are crucial. Just having talked to people like in consulting firms, their approach to hospitality is very much that mindset. Let's look at it as a whole business versus just front of house, back of house. There's a whole lot goes into it, and we can bring different professionals in with their experiences and how do we make it more efficient from the get-go. So that's incredible. Kris, I can't thank you enough for joining me. It's truly been my pleasure to host you. I'm so proud to be a team member in the US side. Eventually I'll make it across the pond where I don't have children that drag me down every day. But no, truly, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you and hear your story. And I really appreciate your honesty about your life, because not everyone will do that. So it humanizes the guy behind the burnt chef fuck stigma. You're a real person, a real dad. And I just really, really appreciate your honesty in the whole conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the space, and I've enjoyed chatting to you. Looking forward to coming to Atlanta and coming to see you in person. Spending some time with you and the rest.
I know we'll be at NAFM, folks.
NAFM, yeah, end of Feb,
well,
right?
Well, I appreciate. I can't. Yeah. Yes, end of February. So we'll be in Atlanta. I'll actually have that link to this so anyone that's attending can come see us and meet the real people behind the show. I want to thank you and thank the Burnt Chef Project, and thank you all for listening and watching. And remember to please check out hospitalitybites.com for more information on the show, my services, hospitality space, and what is next for Hospitality Bites Media. And as always, please be kind to yourself. And Kris, take care.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in today's episode. I'm Colleen Silk, the host and producer of Hospitality Bites and the founder of Hospitality Bites Media. Although this is the final season of Hospitality Bites, there's a lot more in store for HBM. I'm launching a new unscripted show called Beyond the Burnout, which will be filmed right here in my backyard of Ocean City, Maryland, and the Delaware beaches. We're featuring local hospitality professionals and familiar faces discussing everything about the industry, including its challenges, successes, and how to navigate the ever-evolving hospitality landscape. To make this happen, though, I need your support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated and help spread the word about Beyond the Burnout. If you want to know more about the upcoming series, Instagram sponsor opportunities, please visit hospitalitybites.com or email me at csilk.hbm@gmail.com. Thank you for listening and watching, and stay tuned for more episodes and updates. Ta-da!